My wife told me that she wanted an open marriage, so I agreed and made her regret asking it.
Hey Reddit, Randy here. At 52, I've seen a lot of life, the kind you'd expect from a guy who spent a good chunk of his years in the military. Now, I'm the guy who ensures things stay safe and sound, running my own private security firm. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. It's about Amber, my wife, and how our lives have taken a turn I never saw coming. Amber and we've been the kind of couple that folks in our small town of Boulder, Colorado, would look at and say, they've got it figured out. We met way back when I was fresh out of service, and she was this vibrant spirit, passionate about every little green thing that poked out of the earth. Her love for botany wasn't just a hobby, it was her life's work. She's got hands that have coaxed life out of the barren winter ground, and she's known for transforming the community garden into a slice of Eden. We've been side by side for 27 years, and not once did I imagine that our paths would be anything but parallel. We supported each other's dreams, her with her blossoming projects and me with my firm. We were the team that could handle anything thrown our way, or so I thought. I've always believed in the basics, loyalty, honesty, and the kind of trust you can only build over years of sticking it out through thick and thin. Amber, with her gentle smiles and her way of making everyone feel like they mattered, seemed to be right there with me. But life has a way of throwing you curveballs, and this one hit me right in the gut. It all started to change when she hit 50. There was a shift, like the kind you feel before a storm breaks. Suddenly, the woman who'd been my rock wanted something different. She wanted an open marriage, a concept so far out of left field for me that it might as well have been in another language. And I, trying to hold on to the image of us that I cherished, agreed to it. If I'm being honest, it felt like agreeing to slowly poison what we had, but I did it anyway, for her. The story I'm laying out here isn't your usual Reddit tale of woe and heartbreak. It's messy, it's raw, and it's real. It's about what happens when the person you built your world around decides they want to change the blueprints without you. It's not just about what Amber did, it's about how I handled it, with the kind of bluntness and cold strategy that my background taught me. So where were we? Right, the birthday bash. Amber's 50th. It was a shindig that would have made the social pages if we cared about that sort of thing. Our backyard was decked out like the botanical gardens themselves. Amber's doing, of course. She's got a knack for making things beautiful. Exotic plants that I can't pronounce the names of, fairy lights in the trees, and this fragrance in the air that was like stepping into another world. It was something else, let me tell you. All our friends were there, the grill was going, and Amber was floating through the crowd like some kind of earth goddess, all smiles and laughter. Hey everyone. Unfortunately, basically everyone who is watching these videos isn't subscribed. It would mean the world to me to quickly get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and press that subscribe button. It's free, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Sorry for bothering, and thank you so much if you subscribed. I watched her, proud as any man could be of his wife, thinking we were celebrating another milestone we'd reached together. Little did I know, we were on the edge of a cliff I didn't even see. After the guests had left and the quiet of the night settled in, Amber sat me down on the porch. The air was still warm, and the only light was from the dying embers of the barbecue, and those fairy lights now seeming more like a stage set for what was about to unfold. "Randy," she said, and I could tell this was going to be one of those conversations that changes everything. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want in my life, what makes me happy." I remember nodding, still clueless, thinking maybe she wanted to travel or start a new project. But then she dropped the bomb. "I want us to have an open marriage." I swear the world stopped spinning for a second. Open marriage? My brain couldn't wrap around it. This was Amber, my Amber, talking about seeing other people. Like dating? Like sleeping around? I felt like I'd been punched. This wasn't us. This was some Hollywood drama nonsense, not Randy and Amber from Boulder. I didn't get it. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? Questions were firing off in my head like a machine gun, but I just sat there, looking at her, trying to find the woman I thought I knew in her eyes. She talked about freedom, exploration, about being honest with each other and ourselves. She had it all thought out, Said it would be good for us, that it was modern. Modern? I'm a simple man. I believe in one person for life, the vows we took seriously. This was out of my league. But here's the kicker. I said yes. I don't know if it was the shock, the fear of losing her, or some messed up sense of love that made me do it. I agreed to this open marriage thing. Inside I was screaming, but I kept it all in. That's what I do. I keep things secure, even if it's my own breaking heart. Amber, bless her, has never been one for gadgets. Give her a pot of soil and a seed and she's happy. But after that night on the porch, she got herself a new smartphone. Not just any phone, the latest, shiniest one that makes mine look like something out of the dark ages. At first, I thought it was sweet. Good for her, I told myself, embracing the new tech. She was all thumbs at the start, but man, did she get the hang of it fast. Suddenly, she's talking greenhouse climate control systems, moisture sensors, and rare orchids that need just the right amount of everything to bloom. She was in deep, always chatting away in these forums and groups. Or so I thought. Then came the night that changed the game. I'd woken up midnight or something, thirsty for a glass of water. I shuffled into the kitchen, and that's when I heard her, soft as a whisper, but clear as day. "I miss you," she breathed into the phone, and it wasn't about missing the sunlight or the rain. There was a tenderness there, the kind that used to be for me. My heart, folks, it didn't just sink, it plummeted. I stood there, in the dark, the glass of water forgotten in my hand, feeling like someone had just told me the world was flat. This wasn't about climate control or plant species. This was something else, something personal. Now, I've been trained to handle all kinds of threats, to stay cool when the pressure's on, but this was a different kind of adversary. It was betrayal, and it was living in my house, sleeping in my bed. I didn't confront her, not then. I needed to know more, to understand what was happening before I blew it all up. So I did what any guy with a background in security would do. I started paying attention. I became a ghost in my own life, watching, listening, picking up on every little detail that I'd been too blind to see before. It was time to gather intel, to figure out who was encroaching on my territory. And that, Reddit, is how I went from being a husband to a sleuth in my own marriage. It's not a role I ever wanted, but there I was, piecing together a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to see completed. But I'm a man who believes in facing the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. So I braced myself, ready to dig deeper. Hey, Reddit, back again. It's Randy. So, after hearing Amber on the phone that night, things got weird at home. It was like we were both pretending everything was fine, but it wasn't. Then one day, I'm alone at the house and decide to poke around in Amber's greenhouse. It's usually her place, but something was pulling me in. I'm looking around, just killing time, when I see this desk she's got in there. One of the drawers is a bit open. I'm not a nosy guy, but something about that drawer seemed off. I walk over, tell myself I'll just close it and leave it alone. Yeah, that didn't happen. I pull open the drawer and there's a bunch of letters. These aren't like bills or junk mail. They're personal and they're all fancy with words and stuff. They're talking about missing someone and feeling things, and there's a lot of talk about plants, but it's not really about plants, if you know what I mean. I read these letters and my heart is sinking. They're to Amber, but they're not from me. Someone's writing to my wife about being together, and it's all hidden behind words about gardening. It's like they're using code, but it's pretty clear what's going on. I felt punched in the gut. Angry? Sure, but mostly just really hurt. I thought about yelling at her when she got home, asking her about these letters, making a big scene, but that's not how I do things. I'm the guy who's calm and gets the job done, not the guy who loses his cool. So I put the letters back, act like I saw nothing, and start thinking, what's my next move? I've got to figure this out, but I've got to be smart about it. This whole thing is a mess, and I'm right in the middle of it. After finding those letters, I couldn't just sit around. I had to figure out what was going on. I put on my thinking cap and went over every word in those letters, trying to make sense of all the fancy plant talk. Now, I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but I know how to put two and two together. The letters kept talking about the arborist like he was some kind of hero in a movie. I guess for Amber, he was. This guy wasn't just talking about trees and plants. No, he was saying stuff that you don't say to someone's wife. Not unless you're up to no good. I decided to dig a little deeper. Who was this arborist? Was it just a nickname? Or was this guy really into trees? I went through Amber's stuff, the gardening books, the receipts for all her plant stuff, looking for any clue that could tell me more. It hit me late one night when I was going through her computer. She had a bunch of emails about some big-shot guest speaker coming to town to talk about trees. The arborist, the email called him. That was my guy. He was coming here to Boulder, and something told me it wasn't just for the trees. I started to lay out a plan. I had to meet this guy, see what he was all about. But I wasn't going to just walk up and ask him. No, I had to be clever, had to catch him when he didn't see it coming. I had to know what Amber saw in him, what he was saying to her, what made her think all this sneaking around was worth it. And I'll tell you, Reddit, I wasn't going to let this guy just walk into my life and mess things up without putting up a fight. Okay, Reddit, Randy checking in again. Now, let's get to the big show. Amber's been buzzing about this rare orchid for weeks. It's some fancy plant that's hard to find and even harder to grow. She's in charge of showing it off at the botanical gardens, and everybody who's anybody in Boulder's green scene is going to be there. I've got my plan ready. It's the day of the orchid thing, and I'm feeling like I'm about to step into a boxing ring. My guts are twisted, but my mind is clear. This is it, the day I face off with the arborist and find out what's really been going on. I show up at the gardens, and it's packed. People are everywhere, cameras are flashing, and there's this big curtain around the main event, the orchid. Amber's floating around, all smiles, doing her host thing. I see her, but I'm not here for her, not yet. I'm looking for him. Then I see this guy, standing off to the side, looking all important. He's got that I'm a big deal vibe. That's gotta be him. The arborist. I keep my cool and move through the crowd, acting like I'm just there to see the plant. Amber starts her speech, talking about the orchid, how rare it is, how it's a symbol of beauty and resilience. I'm standing there, listening, waiting for my moment. Then she says his name, invites him up to talk about the plant. As he walks up, our eyes meet. Does he know who I am? I can't tell. He starts talking, and I'm just watching, waiting. Then it's time. I wait for a pause in the chatter, a moment when the next word hangs in the air like a jump ball, and I take my shot. Nice speech, I say, loud enough for heads to turn. But I'm curious. What does our guest think about loyalty? About honesty? Seems to me those are pretty rare these days too. The crowd goes quiet. You could hear a leaf drop. Amber's face goes white, and the arborist. He's looking at me like he's trying to figure out if I'm just some crazy guy or if the jig is up. I don't give him time to think. You see, folks, this man here has been sharing more than just his love for plants with my wife. And I think it's only fair that we talk about that, don't you? It's all out now. All the pain, the anger, the betrayal. It's out there for everyone to see. Amber's looking at me, then at him, and I can see the panic in her eyes. The crowd is whispering, murmuring, the buzz growing louder. There I am, in the middle of this packed event, with all eyes on me, Amber, and the arborist. I'm holding one of those letters I found, the one with all the flowery words that weren't about flowers at all. The room's dead silent now, and I start reading. Your essence is the roots that ground me, I read out loud. People are looking around, confused, like they think it's part of the show. Our connection grows, unfettered by the confines of traditional gardens. Amber's face is a picture you don't forget. She's staring at me. All that calm and control she's got is just crumbling away. The crowd's getting the picture now, the whispers are getting louder, and I keep going. Together we are wild, natural, untamed, I say, my voice getting louder. You are the rarest bloom in my personal garden. No one's in doubt now about what's going on. This isn't about plants. It's about my wife and this guy. The guy, the arborist, he's just standing there, not saying a word. Amber's looking like she wants the earth to swallow her up, and I can't blame her. This is her world, and it's all coming undone right here, right now. I look at her, really look at her. This what you wanted, Amber? This what open looks like? I'm not yelling, but every word hits hard. I don't wait for her to answer. I don't need to. I loved you, I say, and it's like the whole room takes a breath. But I guess I was just another plant in your garden, huh? One you got tired of watering. I fold the letter, tuck it back in my pocket, and give the arborist a nod. Take care of her, man. She's all yours. And I walk out. Just like that. I don't look back. I can feel the stares, hear the whispers, but I don't care. I've said my piece, dropped the mic, it's over. Walking out of those gardens, I feel like a weight's been lifted. It's not a happy feeling, not by a long shot, but it's something. Maybe relief, maybe just the first step in moving on. I get in my truck, start the engine, and drive. I don't know where I'm going, but it doesn't matter. I'm leaving that garden behind, and whatever comes next, well, it's gotta be better than what I'm leaving behind. I didn't stick around for the gossip. I went straight to a buddy's place, someone I knew I could trust. I needed time to think, away from the stares and the whispers. But I wasn't about to hide. I had things to do, moves to make. First things first, I called a lawyer. No more games. No more waiting to see what Amber might do next. I told the lawyer straight up, the marriage was over and I wanted out. The papers were drawn up fast, I signed them, and they were delivered to Amber. I didn't see her face when she got them, but I can imagine. Then I took care of the finances. Joint accounts got split, credit cards got canceled. Anything that tied us together, I cut it. It was like taking down a building, piece by piece. You don't want it to fall all at once, you take it apart so you can clear the site and build something new. I won't lie, it hurt. It felt like I was tearing out parts of my life. But it had to be done. I had to protect myself, my business, my future. I wasn't going to let Amber's choices take me down. The house was next. I loved that place, but it was full of memories of us, and I needed a clean start. I called a realtor, told them to sell it. I'd find somewhere new, somewhere without ghosts in every room. And my pride, well, that took a hit. But I'm a soldier at heart. I lick my wounds, I get back up. I started hitting the gym harder, picked up a few new contracts for the business, kept myself busy. I'm rebuilding, step by step. It's not just about getting back to where I was, it's about going further, getting stronger. Trust, though, that's a tougher one. I don't know when I'll be ready to trust someone like that again. But I'm working on it. I've got friends, people who've been there for me through all this mess. They're helping me keep the faith that not everyone's out there to backstab you. So there you have it, Reddit. The story of how my marriage ended and how I started over. It's been a hell of a thing and I'm not through it yet, but I'm moving forward, one step at a time, and that's all any of us can do, right? Thanks for listening. It's actually helped, getting it all out like this. Here's to new beginnings, no matter how tough they are to come by. It would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to the channel. Thanks and have a great rest of your day or night.
Story number 2.
Good day. I don't know if I'll be able to string these words together. My head is a mess at the moment and I don't know how to act. I'm writing this now to see if I can get it off my mind. My pregnant wife has been lying to me for a while now, and I just found out that not only is she lying, she's cheating too. I, 37 male, have been married to my wife, 35-year-old female, for about 7 years now. We have no children, although she's pregnant as I'm writing this. A few months back, I started noticing some changes in my wife's behaviors. She was always a shy, quiet, and all-in-all introverted lady, and that was one of the reasons why I first fell in love with her. We used to cuddle for long hours, without saying a single word to each other, and for someone who's working. Life is very stressful, that was all I needed. But as I said, I started to notice her change. At first I thought it's good that she's starting to come out of her shell, took her 35 years, lol. She started going out more with friends, and she also started staying out long. Before then, my words were a commandment to her. She never went anywhere without my permission. She never did anything too without my permission. Luckily for me, my wife and I cloned each other's WhatsApp account on our phones. I had hers on mine and she also had mine on hers. We did this close to 12 years ago, 6 months after we started dating. It was something of an inside joke born out of seeing the sheer amount of people on the internet who had either been cheated on or duped out of a fortune by the SO. I hardly ever checked it because I trusted her, and she, before now, had never given me any reason not to trust her. But hey, here we are now. When I opened her WhatsApp on my phone, I saw different conversations from men and women that I have never known in my life. Many of those messages were inconsistent, as though she was deleting them. I started to get a little bit suspicious of what was going on. My wife worked for a friend of ours at a gym, so I just shrugged the weird feeling off. Maybe they now have new customers, I thought. Hey everyone. Unfortunately, basically everyone who is watching these videos isn't subscribed. It would mean the world to me to quickly get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and press that subscribe button. It's free, and you can unsubscribe anytime. Sorry for bothering, and thank you so much if you subscribed. Even though I chose not to think too much about what I saw, I decided to turn on notifications for her messages. Let me see what it is she's deleting before she deletes them. One night, while my wife and I were cuddled up in bed, she got a text on her phone. She checked it, smiled, and headed for the bathroom. Hey, what's that? I asked. Nothing, it's just Haley. Haley was a longtime friend of hers. At first, I went back to bed since it's just Haley, why should I care about their conversation? I wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. I have insomnia. So after staying awake for some time, I decided to just check my phone for a minute. As I was scrolling through TikTok, laughing at memes, I got a notification from my wife's WhatsApp account. It was from a contact saved under my husband. I was wowed. I figured she had saved the number, cause I wouldn't bother checking my messages. Now that I think of it, that was really clever of her. I opened the message. Holy shit. My jaw dropped for what felt like a minute. I scratched my eyes and pinched myself, hoping this was a dream. It wasn't. What did I see? A long history of back and forth messaging from my wife and this random guy, ranging from sharing nudes to talking about how they longed for one another, and sadly, some messages dissed me. How could she? What even annoyed me the most was the fact that whilst I read the chat, more messages were popping up. What do you have on? He sent her, to which she responded saying, just a robe, do you want me to take it off for you? He sent a yes, and after some seconds, she sent him a video of her, touching herself, fully nude. Right under my nose. She was doing this right under my nose. I swear I almost cried. It took the will of 1,000 Smiths for me to close that clone app. Minutes later, she got out of the bathroom, got dressed, and headed out. I wanted to follow her, trail her, see who she was cheating on me with, and deal with the both of them. I opted not to, because I knew that with how mad, heartbroken, and pissed off I was, I might have hit Ctrl Z on both their lives. I couldn't sleep that day. I went to the very top of the chat and started reading. From when he first slid into her DMs, she was mad at him for disrespecting me to my face, then mad at me for not doing anything about it. I was confused. I'm normally not one to take disrespect from anyone. As I read on, I found out who it was she was cheating on me with, and if you're guessing Haley's boyfriend, you're 100% accurate. This meth, I thought. I helped him get on Haley's good graces 5 years ago, and this is how he repays me? By screwing my wife? Then it hit me. My wife's pregnancy. Is the baby even mine? Wow. I was grateful to God when we got the news, but now I'm hoping that somehow the kid isn't mine. 'Cause now I decided I was going to leave. I don't really think I need advice here. Maybe if I go back and forth with someone in the comments, I can slowly move on from this. Also, I'm hoping that anyone who sees this and is going through something similar, I'm hoping you find happiness again. Anyway, I went to my lawyer house the next day, being Saturday. See, my lawyer was a childhood friend of mine, and he never seemed to like the woman I gave my surname to. We had discussed the situation. I let him have his "I told you so" rants for a few minutes, then we went down to business. I need a divorce, and I need it yesterday, I told him. I brought him all the documents and asked him to prepare the divorce papers for me, quickly. You're lucky she made you sign the prenup, he said. I guess I was lucky. With the amount of money you have now and that which she earns now, You would have had to pay her off a couple $100,000. Oh my God. I couldn't think straight. I almost fell to my knees in thanksgiving. I thanked God I signed the prenup because, to be fair, I didn't even want to. To give you a rundown, when we were getting married, I was still doing odd jobs while managing my startup company. So I was earning a little above minimum wage while she was making roughly $70K annually. She cited the fact that her company had her in line for management and yada yada yada, so she made me sign the prenup. Well, fortunately and unfortunately for her, when the coronavirus came, her company was one of them that got swept off by the 1.5-year-long lockdown. It got so bad that towards the end, they couldn't even pay their workers. They owed a lot of money, and she ended up getting let go. On the other hand, the lockdown brought good tidings my way. My startup started to make some money, and I was able to retire from working altogether, as by the time the lockdown got to 10 months, I was already making close to $20K monthly whether I came into the company or not. So, back to the issue on ground. My wife angers me to even call her that now, so I'll call her by the devil's spawn name she was given. After talking about what to do with Lucy for a while, I decided that I was going to stack evidence up. I was going to print out screenshots of both their infidelity. I was going to get videos too. I was going to send it to her parents and to the church. She was a minister at our church, and if the kid isn't mine, I was going to leave. I and my lawyer friend Davis went to the bar to help me cool down. He suggested he helped me bag a shawty to hook up with for the night, which I declined. Hooking up with randoms is what got me into this mess. At the end of the day, I was too drunk to drive, so Dave dropped me off at home. As I sat there, drunk, thinking of how my life, which I had planned to be perfect, had now gone up in flames, I was so distraught. At some point, my hours of thinking, I didn't even know when I brought out a rope, hung it up and sat there looking at it for a while. Looking back at it now, that was the most cowardly thing to do, but then I was ready to bid this shitty life going. I went for a run. When I came back, my wife sat in the parlor crying. I hadn't put back the rope and she had seen it there. She ran to hug me as she saw me walk in, saying how she never knew I was going through something, how I never said a word about my pain to her, how she couldn't believe I would try to take my own life and leave her alone with the kid. I was disgusted by her words. The mere sight of the woman I had loved for over 10 years now started to make my stomach turn. She tried to kiss me, saying everything would be all right. I bowed my head. She thought it was 'cause I was still depressed or whatever. At that moment, I looked her in the eyes and asked her, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" She froze, looking at me like she was trying to read my mind. I repeated the question, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Could you believe this devil's child tried to gaslight me? Me? How dare she try to play the mind games? "What do you mean?" she asked. "Are you crazy? I'm here crying my eyes out about you wanted to unalive yourself and you have the guts to ask me, 'Is there anything you want to tell me? Is this some sort of a joke?'" she added. After a lot of shouting and arguing, I was even surprised that I didn't let slip that I knew she was cheating. She went up to the bedroom and I starred in the parlor for a while. I have had it up to my neck, so I decided to pour it out here before I try again and succeed this time. Update. Thank you guys for reaching out to me. I planned to update you all, but I came out of retirement like Lionel Messi, LOL. I took the advice of some of you who said I should seek therapy. I was never really a fan of it, but I must say it has helped me a lot in this trying time. I've also started hitting the gym, as is normal in these situations. I'm glad I shared my story because I never really knew what I would have done if I didn't. After that long argument where I left off, we didn't talk for weeks, which was fine by me as I didn't want to see her face anymore. I kept on taking screenshots and piling them up. Also, I put up hidden cameras in the house. Lucy owned the place. I wanted to believe that she didn't bring him over to the house and that they didn't do anything on the bed we shared. Well, let's just say I was stupid for thinking they wouldn't. After one more month, I had loads of evidence. I created a website which I posted all the videos I gathered, from videos of him to videos of hers, to videos of both of them. If you had seen me working on that website, you'd have thought I was creating a porn site. Well, 3 months later, Lucy was in labor. I had drafted all the necessary documents and had filed for a divorce. Her labor was on the day of her cheating partner's anniversary with Haley. Coincidence? I think not. I went over to their place with a copy of the documents and records of the affair. I knocked on the door and was greeted by Haley's. I handed the documents to her and say to her, "Your husband and my soon-to-be ex-wife are screwing each other." Within seconds, her husband came out, unclad but for a towel wrapped around his waist. I guess he didn't hear me at the door. From the look on both our faces, he knew what was going on. "Honey, I can explain, he said. Why do they always think they can explain? In a fit of rage, since I was days away from being free, I rushed at him, swinging. I even thought he would be able to put up a fight, but he wasn't. Such a pathetic, weak man. He was in his early 40s. As he laid on the ground, passed out like a fat man after one round of intimacy. I stood over him, wondering what would make Lucy cheat on me with this peon. As I left, I pulled his hair, taking a few with me. Now to find out if I'll be paying child support or not, I went back to the hospital, the nurses wondering why I had left and why I was walking in blood-fisted and with hair in my hand. I walked straight to one of the midwives, handed her the hair and said, "Take this. Immediately that child is born, run a DNA test with this hair and with my blood sample. Also, if the child is not mine, be sure my name isn't on the birth certificate." I went out again, to the church this time. Luckily, the pastor was on seat. I handed him another copy of the documents. I didn't even have time to see the look on his face. I placed calls, telling my Staub ex-wife's family that I have an important announcement and I want to meet all of them at their father's house. When I got there, they were all waiting for me. I started handing out more copies, from mom to dad to brother to sister. Everyone got copies. I made to leave, then turned to them. "She's in labor, may be mine, may not be mine." Then I made to leave again. Her younger sister, who weirdly also got cheated on, ran to hug me. She was crying. Her brother shook my hands and said, "Do what you have to do, man. She f***ed up. Feed her to the streets." Her dad walked towards me. A tear in his eyes, he stood in front of me for a while, both of us eyeballing each other. Then he spoke. "You've been the best partner any of my children has had, and you've been my favorite in-law. I know you're going to split from her, and frankly, I'm not asking you guys to stay together. I just want you to know, I didn't raise her this way." He hugged me, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I cried. I headed home, called Davies, and set up the final phase. The big reveal. I had decorated the whole house with balloons and baby stuff, and hung a big sign on the wall which read, "I know what you did." I went back to the hospital. I had already missed the birth of the child, and this woman who doesn't know we are soon getting separated had the audacity to frown. She wanted to argue with me for missing the childbirth, but she needed her rest. I asked to see the child. The nurse looked at me. She had a sad look on her face. I knew what she meant. The child wasn't mine. I had mixed feelings about it. Happy that I don't have anything that would make me have to see this woman again, and sad that I didn't have a child. I went outside and made more phone calls. I called everyone to come to the house that we were celebrating the birthday of the child. Lots of other people in the neighborhood who knew her and us. I really wanted to crush this woman's whole life. Hours later, the doctor let us leave. I thanked the nurse for not putting my name on the BC and left. She tried to argue with me on the way home, but I stayed quiet. I had her right where I wanted her. On getting home, we were greeted by everyone. I was happy. Everyone was here. Her childhood friends, her work colleagues at her new job as a secretary, some well-wishers from the church. Yes, this was the first time I was happy in a while. I was ready to drink her tears. Davis was inside. I had him turn on the 102's plasma TV in the room and had it displaying the videos of her infidelity. We walked in. Her eyes first went to the big sign on the wall. Then everyone walked in ready for a party of some sorts. Psych. I must admit, ruining her life was probably what made me finally find peace. I had washed her dirty laundry in the open, lol. She fainted. I waited for her to awake, then handed her the divorce papers. Davis said to her, "You see, the only good thing about this is you made him sign a prenup thinking he'd want your money. Now you're broke and you're not going to get any divorce settlements." She tried to plead, to hold me in her arms and cry and beg. I laughed and looked at her, then I said, "Remember that day when you found the rope? That day I wanted to end my own life, it was because of you. I gave you a chance to come clean to me, but you decided to pee all over my grave. I was as good as dead then, and you laughed in my face, you mocked me. Well, it's payback time. I looked her in the eyes and said, I'm done, we're done. Then I reached for my pocket, pulled out my phone, blocked and deleted her number right there and then, in front of her and everybody. She was still crying, snort and mucus coming out of her nose and mouth. She looked at me and said, babe, stop. Think about our child. I love you. Don't leave me. Please. I laughed TBH. She didn't know I already tested the kid. I reached again for my pocket, pulling out the DNA results. I placed it on the table. And in true Michael Jackson fashion, I said, but the kid is not my son. As I moonwalked out of the crowd. 2 weeks later. The divorce was final. Very quick, very smooth. I paid nothing, shared nothing, as we didn't even have a joint account. I was free. I saw her only at the depositions. She was a shadow of herself. She wore my clothes to the both of them. It was funny, I swear. Looking at this woman who I loved for 10 years, this woman who, 8 months ago, I would have given my life for without questions, I felt nada. Nada. I won't be updating any further, as I think I have done the story justice. As for how my life is now, I'm just alive in the moment. Davis and I go out once a week to pick up some ladies to hook up with. I've become very fit from the months of living in the gym, lol. So I've become a real ladies' man. As for my ex-wife, I've not heard from her in 3 months. I heard her mum died a few days after I visited. Something, heart failure, I didn't check up. I've continued my therapy, with my therapist very disappointed by my scorched earth revenge. Thank you for reading and responding. I'll take all your judgments and criticism, praise and support in. But hey, as I said, this is goodbye.
It's crazy how life can be sometimes. Not so long ago, I was excited about being married and also marrying the girl of my dreams. I was that guy that people called a loser back in high school, and she was the cool girl that hung out with the cool kids. I saw her from afar, and I was hooked, and so in love with her. She was a gorgeous blondie who looked like Barbie. And after high school, I got a scholarship to USC, though I didn't need a scholarship because my father was rich and he owned a couple of properties. But I got a scholarship because of my academic straight A's on my high school diploma. My father passed away when I was still in college and left me with all his businesses since I was the only son and child he had. I wanted to finish with my studies, so I became a shadow owner and have someone work for me while I work on my dreams. I hate a flashy lifestyle. I like being ordinary. Can you imagine an ordinary rich man? I learned that from my dad. He once said, "Son, a wealthy man isn't a consumer, but an investor," meaning accumulate more assets than liabilities, and that is how you stay on top of your game. I'm proud to say I walked in his footsteps. After some time, my mom fell in love with my stepdad, who is also the guy who works for me. Well, he used to be my father's right-hand man, but now he is my mother's husband. How unbelievable, in a twist of tables. I'm glad my father left everything to me, but I'm also glad my mom found happiness, because my mother had been miserable and depressed for the whole 2 years after my father's passing. I have nothing against my stepdad, and he is actually a very cool guy who taught me a lot about self-development. I'm now fit and healthy. I jog and also work out. That's how I attracted my ex-wife. Life after high school was not that great at all for her. She had failed high school. Luckily, she got a job and was working at the nearest coffee shop. Mom used to say she's bad news, but I didn't listen. She's the lover of things in class. She loves buying expensive clothes. I should have known better, but I was naive. Before my mom passed, we had a delightful conversation, and she said I mustn't marry her, and also I mustn't tell her about the family business she didn't trust. I didn't understand why, because she appeared to be a very good and humble girl. But I guess when they said love is blind, they were not telling lies. I, male 27, met my ex-wife, female 26, at Moneo Cafe, where she worked well. We knew each other since high school, but we never talked to each other nor crossed paths. So I was having breakfast at the cafe when she came and served me coffee. I was surprised when she called me by name. I mean, we never spoke in high school, so I didn't think she would remember my name. But I guess things changed. We started talking, and she asked me what I did. I was an IT specialist. I didn't tell her everything. I kept some things to myself. She asked me if we could hang out sometimes. I was like, sure, trust me. What was like a dream come true? Because I had wanted her in high school, but she was one of those popular girls, so I saw that I was not her type. I didn't even ask her out. She was the one who asked me out. My old feelings for her started to reappear. I should have seen that this was a trap, but I was drunk in love, I think. In my eyes, she was brave for asking a guy out. I wouldn't say much as she was still beautiful. We started to hang around, and I even introduced her to my mom when my mom came by the house in New Jersey. My mom moved out when my dad passed away to California, where my dad's businesses reside the most, and that is where she started seeing my stepdad. We got married a year later into our relationship right after my mom's funeral. I didn't want to be alone, and also I was tired of funerals within the family, so I took our relationship to the next step. My mom's final words are still ringing in my ear ever since we got married. I had never told her anything about the family business. I had a trust issue I did want to tell her, but she needed to earn my trust and prove my mother wrong. And also we had a prenup marriage, meaning what hers is hers and what's mine is mine. She had a problem with it before, but I convinced her otherwise. We moved to Pasadena, California. After our wedding, I had to be close to my businesses. I told my ex-wife that we have to move to California for a fresh start and new life. Things suddenly changed when I said I have resigned as an IT specialist. I wanted to start my own business creating an AI software that's futuristic. I sold the house in New Jersey, and also the cars flew to California and went to Pasadena, where I bought a new beautiful house and a nice Volvo SUV. On weekends, we went to the Olivia Loca Lodge where my stepdad lived, as he is now taking care of that establishment, so my ex-wife thought it was my stepdad's place. So far, she was failing the test. She thought I didn't see the light flirts she would pull with my stepdad. My software business wasn't going well at all. I was failing. It was my first time starting a business from scratch, so they were still L's I had to take, as there were a lot of things I had to learn. When my ex-wife saw that my business was failing, she said I should quit and go work for my stepdad. I was annoyed that she didn't even support me. She started nagging me ever since I started making losses. The nerve she had, she even went to put out a word to my stepdad in private, telling him that my business was failing. I needed help. My stepdad was surprised that my wife doesn't know how wealthy I am, because he came to tell me that my wife went to see him and to put a word on my behalf. My ex-wife was starting to spend money recklessly. She was starting to drink wine every day. Funny how she went back to being that girl from high school. It was like I was her breakthrough or her ticket back to her old self. She didn't even know how to clean the house. She only cared about herself. She started driving herself to the villa before the weekend. As fit as I am still that humble, nice guy, and since my stepdad was all alone, he'll probably need some company. That was what I thought when I allowed her to go to the villa before me. She was practically family, and also, she loved the mansion. Her words. I was swamped with work trying to figure out a new marketing strategy for my business when I got a call from my uncle telling me to come to the villa. I thought it was something urgent, but it was a problem concerning my ex-wife. She was intoxicated and apparently had a blackout and hit her head. She was unconscious. My stepdad was also too intoxicated to drive her to the hospital. Can you believe it? I thought she had found herself a drinking buddy. I was starting to be suspicious that there was more to this than just drinking alcohol together. But I couldn't let that distract me from my goals, so I let it slide. When we came back home from the hospital, she was sorry, and she even tried making it up for it. I didn't want to talk to her, so I gave her the silent treatment. Well, it only went on for a couple of days. Then we went back to our normal lives. She once told me that she was looking for a job as a model. She was starting to chase her dreams, but the habit of drinking came back. She realized it's not easy to chase your dreams, as she quit after 4 attempts and went back to the red wine. We decided that we would move to the lodge and rent out the house we were living in. She was excited, and I haven't seen that side of hers in a long time. My software business started picking up. I was usually busy in and out of meetings. That's why we moved to the villa, so my stepdad would keep an eye on her. I bought an apartment in San Francisco and also set up an office there for my geek team. My stepdad and ex-wife were usually alone. I sometimes have vivid thoughts about them. But my stepdad was way too old, although he exercised and his body was still in perfect shape. I never thought he would do me dirty. Well, both him and my wife. I once went to the villa without telling them that I was coming. It was surprising what I saw. They were sitting in the dining room looking at each other like they were husband and wife. They didn't even notice I was there. The way my stepdad looked at my wife made me sick, and the way she looked at him was more sickening. I couldn't stand it, so I decided to burst their little love bubble by making them notice that they were not alone. We ate dinner silently that night. After that, we went to bed. She was acting differently. She was all shy and quiet. It was awkward. It felt like we were distant, yet in the same bed. I knew from that day that something was really going on between the two, but I couldn't figure it out. I had a surprise for my ex-wife that day, but I decided to put that on hold. As I had developed trust issues, I couldn't just tell her the good news that I had when I felt the bad energy in my lodge. My stepdad was also acting up. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The following day, they tried acting up like everything was fine and said they were just surprised I had showed up. But they didn't look surprised to me. It was more like a spoiler alert, you know. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't pretend like I didn't suspect or see that something was going on between them, so I just left the house. I asked my ex-wife to come with me so she'll see San Francisco and told her that she'll come back with me to the villa. I was separating them for a reason. I wasn't comfortable with her living alone with my stepdad. She was hesitant at first, but eventually gave in. She stayed in San Francisco for only 2 days before she hit me with the "we need to talk." I thought she was going to confess about her abomination with my stepdad. But instead, she didn't even talk. She just hit me with the words, "I want a divorce. It is not working." I couldn't believe it. You know, I was surprised and shocked. I mean, I had thought she was going to tell me what I needed to hear, but she just decided to pack her suitcase. I couldn't stop her, so I just watched her doing the packing. After she was done with her packing, she sat down on the edge of the bed and told me that she was not feeling me anymore, so it was better that we went our separate ways, and that she had found someone who satisfied her and had time for her. My conscience was ready for the revelation, but my heart was not. I was so livid. I wanted to choke her so badly. And then she apologized, which infuriated me more because she had made me a fool and thought she would just say the stupid apology word and everything would be fine. I told myself that she didn't know me. She wouldn't toy with my feelings like that and think she would just apologize and get away with it. So as I got up, she ran for the door, dragging her suitcase. I guess she was intimidated by how furious I was. She stood by the door and told me to expect separation documents soon. Those words still haunt me till this day. I couldn't believe it. Was I not a man enough for her to do me dirt like this? Weeks passed without me going to the villa. I was angry at my ex-wife and my stepdad for having an affair, though I didn't have enough proof that they were indeed having an affair, but my conscience never lies. And deep down, I knew this would happen somehow, my ex-wife having an affair. But I didn't think that it would have been with my stepdad. I admired him for his character and also for putting a smile on my mom's face when my dad passed away, you know. But I never thought he would do what he did to me, which made me think that maybe he had also done it to my dad with my mom. Or was I exaggerating a bit? The anger I had grew more as I had thoughts that maybe he had also done what he did with my mom. I mean, how you would explain him not getting married for a long time until he married my mother. Yes, it didn't make sense on how and why would he betray someone who gave him a job like that. My mother was also not a saint, so in my head, everything I was trying to connect did connect. I couldn't allow my stepdad to get away with everything, especially since my father's passing was not clear, and his relationship with my mother started not long after my father had passed on. Something didn't add up, so I opted to do my own investigation to get to the bottom of everything. You know, if he did this with my wife only, I would understand and leave things as they were because it was actually something I had expected from my ex-wife, but the fact that he married my mother also, meaning he did it to my father, which might have been the reason why we lost him. The wicked man knew a lot more than I did, and I had to find out what that was. A month passed and I was still staying at the lodge. I had hoped that maybe Stacy, my wife, would come back to her senses, but she proved me otherwise. Not that I was surprised, but I thought she loved me just like how I loved her uneducated ass. I should have known that she would do that. I mean, they say old habits die hard, right? And I thought she had changed from the Stacy I went to school with. Was I that naive to think that she would change? The reason why I had been ignorant about her old habits was because I really had hope. I thought she was going to realize that her habits were not good and change, you know. I loved her. Well, I loved her since high school. But that time she was rolling with other cool kids who were on her level, and I was the nerd that didn't fit in her world. So I stayed with the crush I had, up until the day I saw her and made her my girl. I had thought she had become a humble lady, but I thought wrong. 1 week later, I had managed to get the best private investigator who would be able to help me in digging more evidence and information about my stepdad. My guts kept telling me that there was something that my stepdad knew more than that I could have let on. So an investigation done by the best investigator was going to be my ticket to know everything I needed to know. I believed that once I was done with my stepdad, I would make sure he suffers before kicking him out of the villa. I allowed them to enjoy their little love nest in my villa until I had gathered enough of what I wanted to know. I kept monitoring their phones without them knowing, of course. I had seen that my stepdad had been living the best life with Stacy in my villa. Well, my father had left him some money also when he died as his trusted right hand. But I was not about to let him enjoy my father's hard work for free. Not while there was a possibility that he had betrayed my father by stabbing him in the back. Then took his wife, not long after we had buried him. As much as I was blaming my stepdad for whatever that he did. But I also put the blame on Mom because had she not entertained my father's right-hand man, surely my father would have been alive maybe. No one knew what caused my father's death, and it was just sudden. I had thought I knew my mother, but she was also a villain in all the things that had happened in our family. Unfortunately, she had decided to take her easy way out before I even found out the truth. One thing I was grateful for that my mother had done was that she didn't forget to remind to be careful of Stacy. She warned me a lot of times, but I was clouded by love and thought she was nothing like the person my mother had known. I had thought life had humbled her and she had changed. But that wasn't true. Instead, I got the highest level and second season of who the real Stacy was. I should have seen through her when she was the one who asked me to take her out, that I was trapping myself in a worst possible way. Throughout my investigation with the help of the private investigator, of course, I found out that my stepdad and my father were into illegal businesses also, but my stepdad was the one operating everything because my father didn't want to tint his name and use the stepdad for his illegal business. I couldn't believe that my father had a shady business on the side. I had thought he was an honest man, but my thoughts were always wrong, and it angered me that I knew nothing about the business he was doing on the side. No wonder my stepdad was always at the villa even when my father was away on a business trip. He would come home more often, saying he came to make sure that we were okay since my father was away. I should have known that his often checkups were actually to see my mother, not the other way around. Was I that stupid to even put 2 and 2 together to figure out what was happening at home right under my nose? As the investigation continued, I found out that my father found out that my stepdad was having an affair with my mother, but he found that out 2 days before he passed on. That didn't make any sense to me because he would have confronted them both, my stepdad and my mother, the day he found out about the affair, but he kept quiet. There was really more to whatever that was, so I dug more deeper, and I found out that my stepdad had a history that he was dating young girls, and what he did to me, having an affair with my wife, was not the first time he did it, meaning my stepdad was a homewrecker. I don't know if men are called homewreckers, but he was, and not only a homewrecker, but he was dating young girls, and I was the proof of that. I don't know why I found that disgusting because it was. But there was this one intriguing evidence that I found, and it made me happy that I had discovered it. I was able to bring my father's death to justice. Even though they had said he died in his sleep due to stress pressure, he had. That does not make any sense, right? I just couldn't believe it because I had trusted my stepdad with my father's assets until I was mature enough to take over. So in my findings, I found out that my father had passed on due to suffocation, meaning someone had suffocated him to death, and that happened 2 days after my father had found out that my mother and my stepdad were having an affair. And in those 2 days, my father had an altercation with my stepdad because he had found out that my stepdad was two-timing him on the illegal business side, plus my mother and stepdad had planned to scam my father off his businesses. How wicked was that? It was evident that my mother had a hand in my father's passing. I hated him even though she is no more, but what he did to my father was cruel and greedy. I mean, why would you look at your son suffering because of his father's passing while knowing that you had a hand in it? My stepdad was not his first time making women betray their husbands because the evidence showed that he once did it to another businessman who trusted him. He got into a relationship with the wife only for him to use the wife for his dark desires. Once the husband found out that he was planning on scamming him, he sent authorities to arrest him. When my father found him, he was out of jail after being imprisoned for 5 years. I think my father was also a dumbass because how can a smart person trust a jailbird? And the worst part is introducing him to your family as your right-hand man. My father was kind-hearted. He thought he was giving my stepdad another opportunity to find himself. But old habits die hard, right? My father didn't see it coming. I wondered if he didn't do any thorough investigation on him before introducing him to us. So he also used my mother for his own greed and selfishness. Another thing I found out was that my so-called wife was actually a body seller. She was working at the cafe as a day job. She owned an OnlyFans account where she was getting all nasty and freaky with old people who were lonely, so they paid her for her nasty videos. I was really disgusted and disappointed because though she was a forward girl at school, her parents were afforded. I wondered why she would resort to selling her body. The worst part of one of her videos was seen on Twitter Imagine. Why was I so blind? All the information that I had got really infuriated me. I wanted to avenge my father and myself. I couldn't allow them to get away with everything. What infuriated me more was that I had been a fool the whole time because my own mother knew what my stepdad was capable of and agreed to perform such a facade with him so that they could get my father's riches. On the other hand, Stacy made me fall in love with her and made her my wife only for her to make a fool out of me and perform an abomination with my stepdad. All for what? For riches that were not even his. I continued monitoring all their steps without them knowing, of course. My plan was to destroy both my ex-wife and my stepdad. How I wished my mother was also still alive so I would destroy 3 birds with 1 stone. But do you think my stepdad would have gotten into a relationship with my wife if my mother was still alive? Everything was confusing. Time passed and I had gained enough strength and courage to face my backstabbers, and I was in a mix of anger, sorrow, and disappointment. I was disappointed with my parents and my wife. I had thought my wife was going to prove my mother wrong, but she did exactly as my mother had warned me about. I married Stacy not knowing anything about her parents. I have never even met them, and she never talked about them. I was floating in my love bubble and I didn't mind many things, which were very important. I should have asked her or checked her background, but I didn't. And the thing I found during my investigation was that her parents had disowned her because she was not just a rebellious child, but she trended on social media advertising her nudity and freaky acts. Plus, she had a history of getting into a relationship with a married man who was her father's associate, which led to his wife finding out, and unfortunately the wife, Stacy's father's associate, couldn't make it. Also, her mother passed on due to heart attack, which was triggered by the video of Stacy doing nasty acts on social media. That led to her father disowning her. Was I that ignorant? And I gathered all the information and asked the private investigator to send me Stacy's videos. You know, when you are driven by anger and hunger of revenge, you do anything to ease your conscience. I couldn't allow them to scam me like they did to their past. So I took all the information and took it to the authorities, but before that, I called a meeting in my father's business that he had left me, and that was run by my stepdad when I was still at school. I met with all the shareholders and told them that my stepdad was stepping down, meaning I would be the one in charge. Obviously, it was not easy having to make my stepdad step down on his position, but I had to show him the evidence that I had gathered and told him that I would put it on the press and the authorities. Then I asked him to sign all his rights that my father had given them to me. He was livid and told me that I would regret everything that I had done and I would miss him. One thing about me is that I would rather be alone than be with backstabbers. A week after, I contacted my lawyer regarding the divorce and made it quick, and it was a great fortune that we weren't married in a community of property. I had delayed the divorce process so I would be able to gather the evidence that I had found. After I had signed the papers, I went to the villa and asked them to pack everything that had belonged to them and move out. Stacy threw fits and insults and told me that I had no right to chase them out of the villa because it was not mine, but my stepdad's. I couldn't believe it, so my stepdad had told her that he owned the villa, fully knowing that I was the owner of it. No wonder Stacy left me for him. She fell for his lies. I just told them that they had only a week to pack everything that had belonged to them and move out. A few days later, my stepdad once called me asking for forgiveness. and also pleading with me to not kick him out of the villa. Surely he thought I was still that naive small boy, so I just told him that I had nothing else to say to both him and Stacy. A week passed. I saw no movement of them moving out, so I went to the authorities and told them to accompany me to kick people out of my villa and gave them the information I had gathered about my stepdad. When we got there, I found them arguing. Stacy didn't want to move out, and my uncle's accounts were blocked. Nothing was said to anyone, and the authorities did their job and arrested my stepdad for all the things that he had done. I mean, nothing stays in the dark forever, right? A few days after my stepdad got arrested, Stacy came back and tried to apologize for all the things she had done. She came back telling me that she was pregnant with my stepdad's child and she had nowhere else to go, meaning she wanted me to take her back to the villa because she told me that she didn't know that I had owned the villa. She thought it was my stepdad's. I told her to go back to her father's house, but she threw tantrums. It surprised me to know that my ex-wife was actually a very selfish person. She never thought of anyone but herself and what was best for her. To even think that all the signals were there, but I didn't pay attention to them. The only thing that I had paid attention to was my father's business and assets, making sure that I made him proud. I also blame myself for what happened between Stacy and I. Yes, I was not supposed to tell her about my father's businesses, and I didn't, which was one thing that I had done well. But when it comes to giving my wife attention she needed, I failed dismally. For a couple of weeks, Stacy went on to social media and tried to drag my name into the mud. Luckily, I managed to get her to delete all the nasty things she had said about me. I had to threaten her that I would realize her nude pictures and nasty videos that she was doing for the old married men. She was not over the fact that I had arrested my stepdad. She hated me, and the feeling was mutual. I mean, she made me believe that she loved me for me and not for what I was offering. I decided to sell the villa because it had a lot of memories, good and bad. As much as my father loved it and trusted me to take good care of it, I had to let it go so that I would be able to start my life afresh and create new memories. The villa held a lot, from my childhood to my father passing on in mysterious ways in his sleep. I lived in the villa and worked with my stepdad to take out my father so they could take ownership or live there happily ever after in my villa. A lot had happened, so it was time to let it go. I mean, I had enough money to buy me another villa. Though it was not easy letting go of all your good and bad memories, it was going to depress me. 8 months later, I bumped into Stacy again. I had even forgotten about her. She didn't look very well. She was also heavily pregnant. I once heard someone say, "Life will humble you if you are not humble to it." And that was what was happening to Stacy. Life humbled her to a point that she stayed in one of the cheapest and unsafe apartments in San Diego. As much as she had done me bad, I couldn't allow her to continue staying there. If she was not pregnant, I was not going to help her, and that is the truth. Somehow I once loved her, and when I saw her in those apartments full of junkies, I thought about the goods my stepdad once did for me and my family. As much as his bad acts were way too many than his good deeds, I couldn't let the innocent child suffer. I was not doing it for my stepdad, but I was doing it to honor my father. I mean, he once trusted my stepdad, and he helped look after my father's businesses after he had passed on until I had grown enough to take over. So I took Stacy to a better and safer apartment. I asked her why she didn't want to go back to her father's house, and she told me that his father doesn't want her, and he had remarried an evil woman, meaning she once had tried going back home. After I had made sure that she had settled well and there were enough things that she would need, I gave her some rules and told her that if she ever breaks them, she was going to go back to San Diego and I would take the child to child social services. A month later, she gave birth to the cutest baby girl. I loved and still love children. I wished I had a small sibling, but God decided otherwise. Stacy didn't forget to nag me with eternal apologies and assured me that she had changed. Whatever she was doing it out of desperation. She was desperate to get a father figure and attention, which was why she resorted to getting into relationships with rich married men most of the time, because her own father never had time for her, but he had time for her other siblings. I wondered why she had never told me that. I mean, I was her husband, so I had a right to know. I know I had been a bad husband to her because I was busy chasing money and making sure that I did not let my father down because he had trusted me to continue with his legacy. I felt really bad that I was also the cause of her resorting to spending time with my stepdad. Not that I regretted putting my stepdad in jail. He deserved it, and everything that is still coming to him. But what I regret is punishing someone who wanted attention. Yes, I gave and showed her love, but never attention, and that made me feel like a jerk. I continued supporting my stepdad's child, and I vowed to myself that I will take good care of the child and be the father to her, but I was not going to get back with Stacy. A leopard doesn't change its spots, so if I were to take her back, how sure would I know that she won't repeat what she had done, and how would I ever forget the betrayal she once did? I don't know if I made a good decision for what I did. Do you guys think I handled everything well, or I should have done better?